Welcome to Beyond the Boot with Phil Harris and Randall Cunningham. Tonight we got a special privilege by having Coach Smith on, but also, Phil, I believe this is the first time we've ever had a representative from DAR on the air live with us. So it's kind of a special night for us. Coach Smith, welcome in. Glad you're here. Very, very excited about tonight's talk.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me on. I appreciate all you guys do for local sports, and I'm honored to be with you guys tonight.
Well, I appreciate it. Now, I did lie a little bit and said we let Phil just talk because he likes to talk. He does have a little more insight than I do since I'm in Chattanooga. But let's get this interview kicked off, Phil. And I'm interested to hear from Coach Smith.
Well, of course, Blaine, thanks for joining us. Thanks for coming on the show. I want to congratulate you. I know you've got a child on the way. Of course, your wife, Alyssa, she's pregnant. When is she due?
So she's due in early March 13th, and we're excited, nervous, every emotion you can have.
Yeah, I imagine so. I mean, because y'all have just been married about 3 years. How did you meet?
I'm sorry, I lost you there for a second, Phil.
Okay, I was wanting to know how did you and Alyssa, how did y'all meet?
Yeah, so she's actually from Dutton, and we've, our families have kind of known each other down through the years, and we really met after she was at Northeast in school, and I had just graduated from Athens, and we had kind of known each other, talked off and on, and I had actually coached her youngest brother at section. So, we kind of knew each other through that connection and just kind of hit it off and dated for a few years and then got married.
Well, so now you're 3 years in. Well, I noticed that from what I understand, you've got a boy on the way. You already know that. Have you named him yet?
Yes, we have. So we're going to name him Jackson. It's kind of funny name when you're naming a kid, which is everything's a new experience for us. But in education, and she's a teacher also at Sylvania. So when you throw out a name for a kid, it's always, I've got one of those in class, and I don't want to think of that. If you throw out a name and it's the same as a kid you got in class that doesn't behave, you don't want to name your kid that.
Yeah.
So we settled on Jackson.
So you're not going to name him Little Johnny. So yeah,
right.
Hey, I do know that there's not a lot of Randalls out there. I do want to bring that up.
Yeah. There you
not
go.
A lot of Randalls.
Yeah.
Well, Coach, now Alyssa, her name sounds familiar. Did she play at sports when she went to school at section? And did she play sports?
She did. She played basketball and softball. She was a really good softball player, and she graduated in 2014, I want to say. So yeah, she played multiple sports at section. Yeah,
because I knew that when I saw the name, I recognized it from doing, because it's so much basketball I've done over the years. I kind of sort of keep up with Jackson and DeKalb County a lot. Well, of course, now you went to school at Pisgah. You graduated, 2011. You played under a longtime coach, Woody Beard. What was it like to play under Woody?
Oh, Coach Beard was great to play for, and actually I stopped by Woodville on my way home from school today and sat down in his office, talked with him for a while. Coach Beard he's very, very underappreciated. You look at the career he's had, he was at one school for, 25 years, give or take, and consistently successful. And, he had success, playing different ways. And he's a good Christian man. I mean, he's a great mentor to me and to a lot of his former players. And, he's someone that I really admire. He was, if you just talk to Coach Beard, if you're just around him and if you don't play for him, he can kind of seem kind of dry. He's his personality, but there's no one more intense than he could be. I've seen him take charges in the locker room. I've seen him do all kinds of things to get his team to play. So he's a really good coach and an even better person.
Well, I know back when I do a lot of broadcasting, a lot of that time was during Pisgah's heyday when they got to the Final Four twice, made it to, I think, to the Elite Eight once. And I got to know him just a little bit. And yeah, he's a person you kind of want to get to know because, you know, he's kind of sort of to himself. But once you get to know him, you like him, and very smart. And, you know, and he had some great basketball teams, you know, and people, you know, right now, of course, Pisgah's doing real good in football. But over the years in Pisgah's history, they are more known for basketball than they are known for anything, you know, going all the way back to Paul Cooley days.
Right. Yeah, Pisgah has a very rich tradition in basketball and boys and girls basketball. And, you know, Coach Beard played on teams that made it to the state tournament in the early 90s. And like I said, he coached those teams in the early 2000s that were really, really good. You know, that's being someone from Pisgah and Sand Mountain. And, you know, you always want to talk about who are the best teams to ever play, like in this area. And those teams that he had always get mentioned. You know, they were loaded. I mean, at a 2A school, his sixth man coming off the bench played college basketball. You know, and that as a kid, like that was when, you know, that's what you look up to. And that was those teams right there were, you know, that I thought they were as big time as you could get for me as a kid.
Yeah, it was amazing how I can remember back calling their games. A lot of teams, it got into basketball where a lot of people depended on the three-point line, you know, three-point line a lot. He always seemed to have a three-point shooter, but basically what he was going to do was play defense and attack the basket. And I don't know how many games Pisgah won by getting to the free throw line and just kind of wearing folks out.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing about Coach Beard was like I said, his personality, you wouldn't really think, but he's very aggressive. He really liked to play a pressing, up-tempo style. You know, I know right around the time I played and when I graduated, you know, it wasn't uncommon for him to have two, 3 players on the ball at all times, and just trying to trap and be aggressive. And that's just his personality. And, you know, he's had some really good teams, you know, throughout the years at Pisgah. And now I'm happy for him because he gets to coach his daughters at Woodville. And, you know, he's been a huge mentor for me. So I'm happy for him.
Yeah. Of course, you know, going into your dad, of course, Brian Bubba Smith, who's the head basketball coach at Woodville. You know, between those two, were they big inspirations on what made you want to become a coach?
Sure, yeah. So kind of my path in coaching is, you know, I played for Coach Beard. And then the first year I got out of Pisgah and graduated, I had the opportunity to go to Auburn as a student. And I just felt like coaching locally was kind of my calling. So Dad had just gotten the job at Sylvania, and he was there for 1 year. So I helped him, came back to Pisgah and helped a year. And then I went to section and helped Jamie Pruitt, which I know you've had Jamie on. Jamie is my third cousin. So I had those 3, you know, coaches in a span of 5 years mentoring me and me learning from them. And yeah, I mean, one thing I'll say, like anyone that's asked me about, you know, in terms of coaching, you know, young coaches, I always try to tell them, like, get under somebody who knows the game and has a different point of view than you do. And once I finally graduated from college, I went to my first job was at Albertville High School, and I was there for 2 years under Patrick Harding. And Patrick Harding, of course, we know he's won the state back-to-back years at Buckhorn, but you know, working with him every day was like getting your doctorate degree in basketball. He's a genius, and he really had a good perspective on what high school basketball should be. You know, he always talked about, you know, we're in the memory-making business, and even at a school at the level of Albertville, you know, he had good perspective. So I've been incredibly blessed to work under some great coaches. I helped coach Kerry Ellison for a year at Pisgah when he took the boys over. So that's really like, if someone was to say, like, if it was for a job, say, why would you hire you? Said, well, I've worked under some of the best to coach locally, you know, in the modern era on Sand Mountain.
Yeah, definitely. So, of course, you know, your first actual head job, I think, was at Hyder. You spent 3 years there. I know you had one like 12 or 13 win season. It was the most the team had won in a while. And of course we know about either girls sports are doing very well. On the boys side, it's been a little bit of a struggle. But you have, you were successfully able to kind of sort of build a foundation there before you left.
Yeah, the Otter job came open at a good time for me because, I was at Albertville for 2 years, and I was kind of far enough away from home where I kind of wanted to get back. And, I'd grown up in small, lower classification basketball, and it was intriguing to have that building process and be able to take it over. You had Caleb Henshaw on, who's the coach at Otter now, and he's going to do a great job. I have no doubt. He's a really smart dude, and me and him keep in contact. But yeah, when I went to Otter, it had been kind of a string of, I would say, like you said, kind of some dry years. And, the main thing for me was I just wanted to get it to the point to where those kids could experience basketball in a positive way, and it be a fun experience for them. And it wasn't easy. And, we told them from the start, and it's kind of a similar situation to what Caleb's in right now. Like, Rome wasn't built in a day, but they worked on it every day, and that was kind of our mindset. And the first year was, we took some lumps. The second year we were close. It's kind of like the old adage. They say, you're going to lose big, then lose close, and then you can win close. That's just how the way things work. And then the thing I'm most proud of is we had a group of seniors that third year who, there was a handful of those guys who on JV when they were ninth graders had gotten a local rival, had gotten beat like 40 by them. And their senior year, we were able to beat them twice. And just like knowing that it kind of surpassed basketball, they kind of saw that, hey, if we work hard, and when we stay at it, there's so much we can accomplish, and that was what was, made me proud. The fact that they had a positive basketball experience and got to experience what it's like to be on a good team.
Yeah, definitely so, because, it's very important, the most important thing, but there's lessons to be learned. And like you say, and it was probably fun for you as a coach to see this team maybe, I wouldn't say, I don't never want to say overachieve, but maybe got close to reaching their potential.
Right. Yeah. And that's one thing about especially Otter. And like I said, I've been at Sylvania section. Albert was an assistant, and this from doing the scoreboard show and being around these communities. And Otter has such a faithful community, and it doesn't matter win, lose, or draw. They were so supportive, and they were excited, and they were excited to have coaches who were putting effort in and really had energy and excited to be there. And it was just kind of validating for those kids mainly that they were able to experience those things at the end.
Well, after you left Otter, of course, I think you left a kind of successful run there. Probably not where you really wanted to be, but progress was there. Well, you go to Pisgah, and then you go under Kerry Ellison. Of course, Kerry at the time was coaching boys and girls basketball, and he took that on. But the thing that was hard on him, when we had him on, he talked about it. When he was the head basketball coach for the boys, he was kind of taken away from his girls' team. Mm-hmm. So came along at a good time, and Pisgah had a pretty good year that year. Then Kerry had to kind of step away, and you kind of took over the boys program and led them to Jacksonville and got them, of course, upset North Sand Mountain, and then got them down to Jacksonville to the region final. What did you learn under Coach Ellison? I know he's been there since 1997, and I had a lot of radio time when he was having a lot of his success. What does he mean to the game of basketball, to the community of Pisgah, and what has he meant to you?
Yeah, so that year in particular, helping Coach Ellison was kind of a crazy year because, like you said, he took on both programs. I wasn't at the school during the day. I'd actually taken a job at Richard Hardy, Tennessee, and I was helping kind of on the side, get there as fast as I can type thing for practice. And late in the year, he had some family members who had some health issues, and he had to step away. And it ended up where, I had to coach the area finals. And, Coach Ellison was able to get back and make it for the second half of the area finals that year. And I think he had flown in from Houston and had driven from Birmingham, if I think that's correct, or Nashville. And he got there in the second half of the area finals. And, you would think someone who has won 8 or 9 state championships, his name's on the gym. When he walks in the gym, you would think, hey, he's going to take the reins and coach the team. And we were up 11 at halftime, and I didn't even know he was over there. I looked over back behind me in the fourth quarter, and I said, "Oh, Coach E's here." And he let me coach him, and we ended up winning at the end. And but one thing about him was, and you coach for as long as he has, and like I said, kind of like Coach Beard, like 25 plus years, and you get really good at managing your teams. Some people don't understand that. Good coaches can take a team that doesn't have as much talent and mold them and overachieve. But also good coaching is having a team, with talent and being able to manage personalities and get the most out of them at the right time. And that's what I thought he did a really good job of. And it's really hard to coach both teams. It's because it's only so much time in a day. And I think that year, as good as you can do it, I thought he did as good a job as you can.
Yeah, I think in watching Coach Ellison over the years, and I think that's what he does a great job of doing, is what you're saying, is kind of managing his team. He kind of lets their personality, dictate the game. He encourages, it seems like he encourages for them to find their own identity and run with it. And, whether it be attack the basket, whether it be to shoot threes, but, they're constantly aggressive and play very good defense. And, he has had great success over the year and had some great players, many players that scored over 1,500 points in their careers. But, Kerry Ellison's name's on that building for a reason. And I think he kind of spreads the wealth around. He doesn't take all the credit. He puts a lot on those kids.
Right. I just kind of put it in perspective how good his teams have been and how good of players he's had. So, of course, I was there last year as a teacher, and we're kind of cleaning up a back classroom that's connected to the gym. And there's a Gatorade Player of the Year banner under, like, behind a desk that's, anywhere else, it would be, as soon as you walk in, you'd have to brush it out of the way. But, at Pisgah, it's just another day at the office for Pisgah girls basketball. They have had so much success and a crazy run of talent, and it's pretty cool, to have been here and been a witness to it for most of my life.
Yeah, I can remember when I was doing radio broadcasts from Jacksonville. I know Coach Ellison would kind of dress conservative. He'd usually wear, a tucked-in shirt and a collared shirt during basketball games. But when he get to Jacksonville, he always broke out that snazzy suit. And I made comments about it, about him breaking out the suit when he would go to Jacksonville. And he said a couple of things to me about it. But, he would really show out when he got down to Jacksonville. But, to me, sometimes I think you kind of look around at a coach like him and you kind of play the way you dress, and sort of he's a neat person, he demands excellence and he gets it from those kids. And, it don't seem like to me he just rides them tooth and nail. He gives them the freedom to be themselves.
Yeah, he's kind of similar to Coach Beard in the sense of he's quiet. Sometimes when he talks to you, and I've told him this before that, you have to say, what'd you say? Like I'm always asking because he's just so quiet, kind of mild-mannered. But he does a good job of holding his players accountable. And you mentioned his suit game. So when we made it to Jacksonville that year, he was coaching the girls, and I kind of stepped in and was had coached the boys for the remainder of the year. And I think someone had asked me if I was going to wear a red blazer, and I told him I swore when I left Albertville High School and Coach Harding's staff I would never wear a suit again to coach. So I couldn't go back on my promise because we had to wear a suit every home game, and I was out. I'm a quarter zip guy now.
Yeah. Hey, I understand that for sure. Well, tell me this. I mean, of course, you left Pisgah. I want to ask you about this. What's the difference? Of course, most of your Marshall County schools are bigger schools. What's the difference in basketball in Marshall County than it is in our DeKalb Jackson County area? I know a lot of it's bigger schools. It's just mainly maybe just more athletic players.
Yeah. I think the main difference is, and something that kind of hits you right away, is in Marshall County, the schools are a little bit more spread out, and you have county and city. You don't have quite the connection that you do in like a Jackson or DeKalb County, where everyone's very, very close. I know, like, we're having the Marshall County tournament this upcoming week, and they do the seeding by record, and one of the reasons they do that, I would think, is because just nobody really sees each other play. Whereas in like Jackson County and DeKalb, I mean, you're crossing over and playing each other, pretty often. So I think that's a big difference. But as far as, athleticism, the schools are a little bit bigger. There's quite a, there's a lot of basketball culture in Marshall County, and that. And I was able to be there as an assistant for Coach Harding for 2 years. And, when they have that county tournament at Snead, it's a big deal, so the passion for basketball runs deep in Marshall, Jackson, and DeKalb for sure.
Yeah, definitely. So I know DAR, of course, they've had football for several years now, but, DAR is mainly a basketball school first. Is it Justin Jonas that's the boys basketball coach? Didn't he play Douglas?
Yeah, he played at Douglas. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought he did. And the thing is, when you get up to 4A basketball, and I know Plainview has now moved up to Class 4A, you see some very athletic basketball teams, when you start getting into that 4A level.
Yeah, for sure. And there's been years where, and I think within the last 10 years where, you may have wanted to be in 3A instead of 2A. You may have wanted to be in 4A instead of 3. Just depends on how it falls and what the matchups are. But, for example, last year, I know Coach Jonas and those guys went to Birmingham, and, you're going to run into a Jackson high school. You're going to run into a very athletic, inner city school that's going to be a tough match for most teams. But, usually that's going to be every classification to a certain extent. But yeah, Coach Jonas, and Coach Howard too, who's the girls coach. That's one thing that they've really done is, embrace me, and they've been awesome. 2 really good coaches, and I've had a really good time, from the outside looking in, watching how they run their programs and learning from them.
Of course, now you're the junior high girls coach right now?
Yeah. When I got the job, I was that was my coaching assignment, was junior high girls, and I kind of just give my 2 cents on the varsity boys and girls whenever they ask.
Yeah, of course, you've had head coaching experience and everything, and you spent the 3 years at Ider and 1 year at Pisgah. And, we talked about this off the air, but kind of explain to us again, for the people who really don't understand that all of a sudden you left Pisgah, and some people don't get the real story behind that. But what was your reasoning? And I know it was family involved, so you can explain that, for leaving Pisgah to take, maybe a less responsibility type job at DAR, to kind of step away and, like you say, reset.
Yeah, it's really just as simple as, I came back from Albertville and to be closer to home. And, I got the job at Ider, was there for 3 years, coached at Pisgah for 2, and was going into year 2 of teaching at Pisgah. And with having a baby on the way, and just kind of the way our life is moving, I just kind of felt like it was best for my family to kind of hit the reset button. I'm 31 years old, and, we'd kind of talked off the air about, would I want to go into admin, or would I want to do this or that? And like, I'm very passionate about coaching, and I think that's where my future is. But I just felt like at this time, it was best for me and my family to hit the reset button. And, I had connections at DAR, and like you said, DAR is a basketball school, And, I've always heard great things about DAR. And since I've been there, I mean, every one of those things has been confirmed. For people who haven't been to DAR, you need to go. Like just to go to the campus, just to experience the. I'll tell you a quick story, Phil, about.
Yes, go ahead. Yeah, it's your time.
So my first week at DAR, they had all the daughters. If you don't know about how DAR works, it's the Daughters of the American Revolution, and they come to campus and they have a program that they do that the school does, and they're on campus for 2 days. And I can't remember if it was the 100th year, 75th year. It was some type of anniversary. And that was my first week on campus. And when I got hired, they said, look, you're just going to have to hang on hang on by anything you can hold on to this week, because there were hundreds of, donors on campus, and it was a wild week. Like it was a different place for about a week. And I was like, man, this place is different. It's unique, but it's very, very, it's a very cool place. And I'm very appreciative to be there. And everybody there has been awesome.
Yeah, that's back when I was calling games for K98 in Scottsboro, when I worked for Ron Livengood, DAR was in our coverage area. So I did a lot of DAR games, a lot of games from DAR. And, I don't know that there is more a passionate school for basketball than DAR. I guess, Skyline might be close, but DAR and Skyline are special places when it comes to basketball. Basketball is it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think when you think of schools like Skyline and, like you say, DAR, like you think of basketball. That's the first thing that pops into your head. And, one thing that's cool there is, of course, they've got the new gym that's been there for, I don't know, about 15, 20 years, give or take. But they've also got the middle school gym. And I actually posted a picture of the log cabin gym. And there is a gym on campus that is a log cabin. And Coach Kenny Downs actually told me that it's the largest vertical log cabin in the United States. When they constructed it, they got it out, all the wood they got from Gunner Mountain, and all the stacks are vertical. They're not horizontal. So it's incredible. The campus, and there's a bell tower. I mean, I just walked to school. Like I walk from class to class. I'm just like, is this place real? Like it's a very neat place.
Yeah, anybody that hadn't ever been there, just driving through and seeing the front of the school, it's just like stepping back in history.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, definitely. So, well, Blaine, I meant to ask you about this back during the county tournament last year when, of course, Pisgah got on a good run last year. Of course, and we didn't really talk about this, but I was involved because of the radio. The football team for 2 straight years went deep into the playoffs, and it kind of run into basketball. Y'all didn't get to play as many games. And I know you had a good team coming back because Dustin Holcomb got hurt during the football season, so he was limited early. But y'all kind of come together during the county tournament, and you had to go up against your dad, Brian Bubba Smith, who's the head coach at Woodville. What was that like for you emotionally?
I mean, for me and him, I figure to me, I never really thought about it much. I don't think he likes playing me. And he's mentioned that. And, when I was at Ider, my first year, they were already on the schedule. They were not in our area, but they were on the schedule. And my grandmother, his mom, went to the game and sat on his side the first half, and then on my side the second half. And we tried to explain to her, like, you don't have to do that. You can just sit wherever you want to. But it's always, something cool. I didn't like playing him last year, to be honest with you, because he had a good team. It's one of the better teams Woodville has had in a while. And, I didn't want to be the team that put him out. But I always give him a hard time because my first year at Ider, we weren't very good. And he played us, and then we got better, and he wouldn't play us anymore. And he would always say, well, I just don't want to play you. It's an emotional type thing. And I'm like, yeah, you didn't say that the first year we played each other. So, but yeah, it was a cool experience. And I know it made I know Jason Bowen had written something about it in the paper and Sentinel, but It is what it is.
Yeah, definitely. So, I can remember the game. It was very close for a long time, but I think y'all were a little deeper than they were, and kind of sort of, wore them out at the end of the basketball, at the end of the
Yeah.
game. But yes, for a 1A school, Woodville was very good last year.
Mhm.
He had an outstanding team, but he just wasn't very deep.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. He had a very good team. Very good team. One of the better teams they've had in the last 20 or so years. And it was disappointing because they had a chance to go to Jacksonville, and they're kind of like us. They just didn't play well in the 2-3 game in the area tournament. I'll say one quick thing about my dad. So, growing up, I would have, and he was a bigger guy, and he's actually lost a ton of weight now. But growing up, he was a bigger guy, and I would have so many people come up, to him and say, "Man, your dad, he's big. He could shoot that ball." And he's talking about how good of a shooter he was and how good of a player. We had a buddy of ours that coaches at North Sun Mountain, coaches football, and he had went to a coaches clinic in Auburn, and the Auburn's offensive coordinator was Chip Lindsey, and they got to talking, and the coach said, "Hey, I'm from Pisgah High School," and he said, "Yeah, Chip, this is Chip Lindsey talking." He said, "I went to Bob Jones in Huntsville." He said, "We came and played Pisgah one time." He said, "Y'all had this big old tight end jump up and catch this pass in the back of the end zone. His name was Bubba." And Chip Lindsey, the offensive coordinator at Auburn, was talking about my dad catching a touchdown in high school. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, it's your memory, small world. I guess you
Yeah.
could say. Well, I've had stories like that. I know my senior year in the playoffs, we played against Brilliant, and there was a quarterback that played for Brilliant, and his last name was Elkins. Well, he turned out to be the CEO of Unclaimed Baggage in Scottsboro. So it's amazing how later on in
Right.
life you find out where people end up. It's kind of funny how that works. Well,
Yeah.
Blaine, when you decided to step away from head coaching, of course, I know your career was just getting started and there was a lot of factors involved. What was your advice from your dad? Did you ask him for any advice at that time?
Yeah, I did. He was supportive of it. He was kind of in agreement with me. I think it'd be good if you take a reset on coaching and just kind of see what you want to do. And when I say a reset on coaching, I don't want it to sound like I'm thinking about not coaching, if that makes sense. But just
Yes.
for my family in the current time, it was good timing for me. But he was supportive, and he understands. He was at Paint Rock Valley for 4 or 5 years, and he did a really good job there. This was in the 2007, 8, 9, somewhere in there, and he actually quit at Paint Rock Valley to come watch me play in high school. So he's kind of been down that road and kind of make that decision as far as the family decision goes. So yeah, I definitely think he understood and he was supportive.
Yeah, I think this will be good for you in the long run. You'll have a lot more time at home with your wife, and of course, now that you're having children, you'll be able to spend some quality time with them because, really as a head coach, you're going to miss a lot of time with your son, and I think even Caleb Chisenhall talks about that. There's many a nights he spends on the basketball court with his kids there, and he's like he said, he goes, "I love you." He's because I'm missing time with my son. He said, by the time I get home, he's in the bed, and that's the kind of things you don't want to miss.
Right. Yeah. That's one thing I'll say is in helping Coach Pruitt at Section and helping Coach Harding at Albertville. But at the time I helped both of them, they were coaching their sons. And, I had a kind of a crash course in what being a coaching dad looks like, and it's a life full of sacrifice. And having been a head coach for 5 years, I know that it's a life where you got to sacrifice. But I feel like the positives and the impact you can make on people is what really makes it worth it in the end. And I think that's the biggest thing. The thing that I enjoy the most about it, and what I miss not being a head coach and running a program is having that daily impact on your players. And there's give and take, good and bad, but I think that's the most important thing and the thing that I miss.
Hey,
That's how,
Coach,
you know,
we got to use
go
a
ahead.
question that kind of falls into this mode of where you're at in your career. To this point, and I know you moved away, but in your in your first run coaching, is there a memorable moment or a most memorable moment as a coach or a player that you can describe that made you love the sport?
An early memory.
Either as a coach, maybe it's a
Oh,
or a coach, maybe it's
right.
one of each.
Yeah, I think I would go back to my time at Ider, and I very late in my third year there, we were kind of building up to play in the area tournament, and we had to play North Sun Mountain, who Coach Hicks, Cole Hicks, and then his dad Glenn Hicks were both coaching at the time, and I've got so much respect for them. For the last, I guess, 5 or 6 years, I've had to coach against them. I know it's hard to beat them. But at Ider, I don't think they had beaten North Sand in quite some time, and we beat them 3, at Ider, and it was a big deal for the community and for those kids. And once again, like that, to me, those are the moments where, as far as on the floor, you feel like there's validation for how hard you work, and just having like the kids in the locker room after the game, and we had guys crying over winning a regular season game, but that's just how much it meant to them. And I think that's what's special about athletics is, you pour your blood, sweat, and tears. I like to say your blood and guts. You put your blood and guts out there, and it's all worth it in the end.
Excellent. Phil, sorry to interrupt. Just thought
Oh.
that question fit real well right there.
Yeah, I think, and of course, it goes back to that too, Blaine. I know a lot of people from Ider, and they want to beat North Sand Mountain. I don't care if it's it's just one of those things. I think it's one of those that sometimes maybe they would rather North Sand Mountain lose than Ider win. Sometimes it's kind of funny how that is, but when Ider beats North Sand Mountain in anything, it means something.
Oh, absolutely. I remember that. It's funny how you remember certain points in your life. Like I remember that night, and just the people, coming up to you after the game, just, so excited, like not even have any kids or have anything to do with it, and just excited about the moment and being able to, for those guys to experience it. And yeah, like I say, Ider is a super passionate place, as far as athletics and their school goes.
Yeah, definitely so. Coach, when it comes to basketball, I didn't really ask you about that. Kind of what is your philosophy? Are you a big X's and O's guy, effort guy? Do you like to press? What would we see if we were watching your basketball team? Of course, I saw them last year, but what does it like to do as a basketball coach as far as offensively and defensively?
Yeah, I think most coaches you would ask that question to would say, they would want to give their players enough freedom to operate and be their own players. I think especially at this level, you've got to be especially, understanding of your personnel. Like my teams at Ider, we played kind of more of a slow, deliberate type style. We ran a lot of set plays, ran a lot of quick hitters. We tried to be really solid in the half court, and we were more kind of a grind you up kind of team. And then like last year at Pisgah, we had more of an athletic type player and more depth. So we pressed a little bit more, like you talked about earlier, kind of got after people. And I think it's got to be really personnel driven in that sense. If you said, hey, you get to coach one style and this is it, of course we'd press, the entire game, and we'd play with 10 guys, but that's not always what you're capable of doing. But to me, not so much X's and O's, because I feel like most people would probably give kind of a, an answer similar to that. To me, the most important things as a coach is that the players are invested. So it's got to be really important to them. I've never seen any soft teams win when it matters. So you got to be tough. And then you got to have a certain level of togetherness. And being invested together and tough are really important to me as a coach. And that's something I've tried to preach to my guys.
Yeah, of course. It's such important. The most important thing is those kids on the floor have to be player driven.
Right. No doubt. that's the best teams, when you have guys who are going to hold each other accountable and say, that's not how we do things. And the best teams I've been a part of, and the ones especially as an assistant are the teams. I've heard Coach Bucky McMillan at Sanford has talked about, you really don't have a true team until every person has sacrificed something, for the team. And that's kind of what I've tried to preach to our guys is, the validation is going to come when you have that togetherness and you lay it all on the line for each other. And that's when it's really special.
Well, to kind of piggyback off of what Randy said about asking you about your most memorable moment as a coach, what was your most memorable moment as a player at Pisgah?
So I know we've talked about basketball a lot, but on the football field, we went to Rogers High School in 2010, and I ended up kicking a 38-yard field goal to win at Rogers. That's got to be up there. There's no feeling like that. I mean, especially when nobody on either side thinks you're going to make it and it goes in. So that would be up there. I kind of told my teams before, like, I was just an average player, but one thing I tried to do was I tried to always work to be the best I could be. So I don't have all the good stories. Like Coach Pruitt came on and he's got all the good stories about state tournaments and all that. I've just an average player, but that would be my number one, would be that kick at Rogers.
Yeah, I think probably, Blaine, it was probably like the same way I was. I was kind of I was a solid player when I played football and baseball, but I was kind of sort of that role player. I just kind of sort of did my job. And if an opportunity came, I'd make a big play or something like that. But that was kind of my role. I wasn't an all-star, but I tried to be the best at what I could be. I wasn't going to out-athlete anybody, but I could often outsmart somebody. So, that's kind of the way I played the game.
Yeah. I couldn't jump over a phone book, but I kind of valued fundamentals and playing with your mind and your head and trying to be smart. And I think that kind of has transitioned into me as a coach, kind of valuing, skill development and what it takes to be good as a player.
Well, we've talked about a lot of things, Coach. I want to ask you about your faith. How does that work in your family atmosphere? Of course, how do you kind of sort of work that into your athletes? I mean, you don't want to beat them to death with religion or anything like that. Are you kind of a leader by example when it comes to your faith?
I try to be, and I especially feel like I've done a better job of that in recent times. If I could go back and either take all the, any win that we had, but the regret that I have is that I wasn't more open about my faith. And, I think we all have that experience to a certain extent. We wish we could go back and, not be hypocritical, not be anything other than genuine with our teams. I think it's important to share your faith with your teams, and I've tried to, over the years, to give some type of, Bible lessons that tie into what all the things you may face as a team, and I think as far as family goes, we've talked about my wife some, but I married, the best Christian woman in the world, and I have a great family to go with it. So it's really influenced me as a coach to be more cognizant of the fact that, my players, they need to hear about, basketball, all those things on the floor, but they need to hear about Jesus for sure.
Yeah, because I think we sell them short. In the past, it was about tough love and those kind of things. But, these kids nowadays are not led in a positive direction in a lot of ways. And I think this is where these times where coaches and teachers play a lot more important role today in leading these kids in the right direction.
Right. It's kind of like the Billy Graham quote about, a coach will impact more people in a year than most people ever will. And it's really true when you think about it. You've got a voice that is unique to a lot of these kids. And we talk about, and we've talked about this at church I go to in Dutton. But we talk about how, we need to do missions. We need to get the word out to people in where it be foreign countries that don't know about Christ. And we have kids in our schools who don't know about Christ. We have kids down the street who don't know about Christ. And it's our responsibility as Christian leaders to share, Christ with them, and not to beat around the bush about it, and to just tell them the truth. And, it may not always be the most popular thing. And, sometimes the truth hurts, but that's what they need to hear.
Yeah, and you was talking about, Coach. I know you was talking about when you was at Ider, you may not have shared things like you felt like you should, but I think that becomes with maturity, confidence as yourself as a person, because you're still a young guy, so you're growing in confidence, and after a while, you get to the point where you don't care what people think. You want to teach these kids what's right. And I want to ask you this: of the God-given talents that that God has given you, what is your best quality that you were able to share, say, with your players or even with your students?
I've always felt like, and I don't want this to come off to sound, I want to stay humble, but I do feel like that I've always had a good rapport with, the high school kids and kids that I've coached, and I feel like there's a level of connection there to where they can come and talk to me, and I can talk to them, and it can be about something that's important, and I wanted to touch on this too, because we talked about Coach Beard, but Coach Beard would actively share the gospel with us in our team, and he would make it a point to talk to us about those things. And like you said, it wasn't every day, and it wasn't any type of beat you over the head with it, but he always talked about how coaching was his ministry. And, I think if that can be what's said about a teacher or a coach, the way I like to put it is, and me and Coach Beard actually he got this for me and my wife as a wedding present, going to Coaches Outreach, which is like kind of a weekend trip, and it's Christian coaches from across the South. And they talked about, are you a coach who is a Christian, or are you a Christian who coaches? And there's a difference. What's your title? What's your legacy? And I want mine to be, I'm a Christian who coaches. I think that's a big deal.
Yeah, I think that's a good saying. I think that's very true. As I've gotten older, the things I've went through, as I was a kid at 10 years old, I knew I wanted to go into radio, but it's become more important than that as time gone by. Doing scoreboard show, you want to raise up the communities and these kids, because for a short time they're on a stage, and that don't last very long. So you want to uplift them anytime you can. That's like doing these podcasts. I think it's what's good is for people to get to know people as individuals, because they're less apt to criticize.
Right. Yeah, I think it's good too, especially locally, and what you guys are doing is because a lot of coaches and athletes don't have a way to, show themselves as people. They just, whether it's what you see in the newspaper or whatever it may be. But I've enjoyed watching your guys' show, just getting to know people that I've already had a relationship with, like Coach Pruitt. I watched the show you did with him, and Coach Henshaw, Coach Gilbert and Luke Gilbert. I watched that one as well. So, I think I can speak for most coaches around here when I say we appreciate what you guys do.
Yeah, I think what you're talking about, to kind of piggyback off that, is one of Ider's players, girls basketball players. Her mother told me that she's known Caleb for years, and of course her daughter plays for Coach Pruitt, but she's known Caleb for years, and there was things he shared she had no idea about him, and I think that's what makes this good. Yeah,
for sure. I totally agree.
Yeah. Well, Randy, is there anything you want to add to?
You know what? The listeners ask better questions than I do. So I want to hit a couple of listeners' questions and comments. This is more towards what you did, Coach. And at one point, I stepped away from a career to do something else to be a full-time parent. But he's talking about what a sacrifice it is to coach and how much time you lose away from your family. I just wanted to get your opinion of coaching a younger group. Does that bring having the junior high girls, and I have a 14-year-old daughter, and I know how stubborn she can be, but when she gets it, it's a lot that flips on. Do you get that sensation with coaching that younger group?
Yeah, for sure. I talked to our team a few days ago when our season ended. I said, look, I've only been here for a few months, but my love for basketball has just grown and grown and grown from coaching them. And that was the first time that I'd coached girls. I'd done training for girls before, but coaching, and not only girls, but also junior high boys. For most of my career, I've coached the junior high as well. So there's something to be said for when you've got that age group and even younger than that. And you really see more so than you do at the high school level, the impact that you're making on them. And I totally understand what you're saying. When I was at Ider, my last year there, I coached the third grade team, and we had 18 kids come out. So we had to split them into two teams. So I coached two teams and the varsity. So, he was kind of strapped for time, but like just seeing those kids grow and, seeing, how much they, were excited to play. And that's really what makes it fun and exciting. And I totally agree.
I have a freshman football player. They're playing the flag football, so I got to spend the whole year watching from the sidelines of a bunch of girls learning a sport. So there was a great reward in seeing that. The other question kind of follows that from Joseph Hughes. Do you have a player that immediately comes to your head? We talk about starting at point A and probably finishing it at point B that just grew while you were their coach.
Sure. There's two players that come to mind immediately, and I hope they listen to this. So when I was at Ider, Brody Chapman and Everett King. So both of those guys were what we would call role guys. But if you had looked the first year that I got there, if you had seen those two and the development they made, my last year there, both of those guys started for us.
Nice.
And after each season, I would kind of make up kind of the cut-ups of game clips and kind of concepts and things we tried to do. And those guys were always the ones making the play. And they were not overly talented guys, but they just played so hard and worked and got better. And those guys are the ones, those type of players are the ones that, as a coach, you look back and say, like, that's what made it worth it, was those guys and the improvements they made and, how they bought in. So, yeah, those two for sure. I don't want to leave anybody out. I've had quite a few even in 5 years, but, I wanted to give those two a shout out.
Well, just a shout out to your mom, too, for switching sides. I love the University of Tennessee at Knoxville, but I graduated from UTC, and they play every 5 years in football. So whoever has the football, I wear that jersey, that hat. Then when they kick back, I put the other jersey and other hat on. So I understand where she was coming from.
Yeah. Of course, my family is very, very passionately Auburn people. And I say that's an understatement. But my dad did marry my stepmom, Jana, who is a Tennessee fan. And they try to go to one Auburn game a year, one Tennessee game, all right, usually a year. So yeah, they try to keep it. I guess it's not really a house divided. They're pretty pretty tame with it, I guess you'd say. But like I said before we were on the air, as long as it's not Alabama, we're okay.
I think we would all on this show tonight agree with that assessment. Coach, it's just
I think, Coach, what it is there is with Tennessee and Auburn, it's kind of sort of it's a friendly rivalry more than anything else. You want to beat each other, but it's not life and death. And, of course, you got to get a little pat on the back here now as Auburn, after Tennessee got beat, they moved to the number 1 spot. So right now, Auburn's on top of the on top of the globe right now. Of course, I mean that's going to change a lot before the season's over with. But they've got an outstanding basketball team.
Yeah, my uncle always said when Tennessee's good, it's bad for Alabama. So that's why we root for Tennessee. I will say that, and I kind of ingest, joking, but the SEC is so loaded. I mean, with basketball talent, it's incredible, and it's best it's ever been. And for an Auburn fan, like as a kid growing up loving basketball, and we were so bad, and all those years I pulled my heart out for Auburn to be good. Now that they're good, I'm trying to savor every second of it.
Coach, back to your point, the 16 hardest schedules in the country were released. In 1 through 16, the hardest schedules were the 16 SEC teams. So
yeah.
How good SEC basketball is.
Yeah, exactly.
But God,
well, it's kind of strange. Oh, I'm sorry, Randy.
I'm just going to tell him it's a pleasure to have someone on the show that's invested in that age group of girls now, because I think sometimes, and I speak as a girl's dad, that group you can influence them more than you can any other group. My daughter has a strong coach in her life, and having him, her grades improved, her attitude improved, and I give her coach a lot of credit, because as a dad, you lose their ear at some point, and maybe a coach has it.
Right. Yeah. That's kind of what I taught, when I say, we have, like, as a coach, you have a unique voice because you're coming from it at a perspective that those kids normally are going to respect and normally are going to take what you say and try to please you, try to do what you ask.
Coaches are huge. Go ahead, Phil.
Oh, I think at that age, I think they're so open for information. And, as teenagers get older, they get to the point to where they know everything and don't want to listen.
Yeah.
You've got them in a good time when they're vulnerable and, they will listen to information. And of course, too, what's great about coaches too, and kind of like what me and Randy does is sometimes you can share information and it's outside the family atmosphere that these kids will listen to you when sometimes they will tune their parents out. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't tell you how many times, in coaching that you can, when a kid comes in and you can just see it, they've had a bad day, something's going on at home, and you have a different point of view and a different way of approaching that maybe someone that's closer to them, maybe a family member, it may be too touchy of a subject, may not be able to talk about it, whatever it may be. But yeah, I think that, he talked about the stresses of being a coach, and that's, like I say, that's what you miss is being able to impact their lives. And that's the most important thing.
Amen.
Well, Coach, I want to ask you this: when you're coaching basketball, I wonder if you go through if you have a certain thing you go through in coaching, like you kind of sort of get away from things for a few minutes before a basketball game starts. Do you kind of surround yourself with people, or do you kind of distance yourself?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. I would say, we talked about like my philosophy as a coach, and kind of, this is not necessarily the philosophy, but my approach has always been, to be very locked in and dialed in, and I guess you would say I'd probably do distance myself to a certain extent, to try to be the best that I feel like my team can be. I don't really, a lot of coaches you hear about having superstitions. I don't really have any superstitions, but I've heard of some good ones though. I remember, which being an Auburn guy, I know Coach Hugh Freeze used to make his offensive line coach change shirts if they weren't running the ball well at halftime. So maybe if we're not scoring the ball well at halftime, I may go in and change clothes from here on out.
Yeah. I kind of understand what you mean. I remember back even when I played football, I kind of sort of was to myself because it was certain intensity. Then once the game started, I loosened up and I was okay and I was approachable. But before the game ever started, it just seemed like I was so intense that I tuned everything out.
Right. Yeah. I think every person is different. I've had teams where, they only, and I played on this type of team when I was in school at Pisgah, and bless Coach Beard's heart, because I know it drove him crazy, but we were the most loosey-goosey, wild, fun-loving, just goofballs, and then we'd come out and win by 30, and it didn't make sense, but that's just how we were. Some teams are just better when they're loose. I think that's kind of the modern athlete. I think they've got so much going on in their lives now that, basketball or athletics can be that release for them. And I think you're always going to play better when you're loose. Me and Coach Beard were talking about today, Coach Lenny Acuff, who was at UAH for quite a number of years as a men's basketball coach. And he had a quote he talked about. He said, "I'm not very good at much, but what I am good at, I enjoyed." And that's kind of the way I look at it. I don't want my players to dread practice. I don't want them to, there should be a little bit of anxiousness before a game. I always was nervous every time we played, didn't matter who we played as a player. But I think there should be, it should be loose and some flexibility there to where they're going to play with confidence and play their best.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. And when we've had Coach Jamie Pruitt on, and then also we've had Luke Pruitt on, they talked about their teams off the court or off the field, very loose in the locker room, very outgoing, very playful. But once they walked inside that white line, it was all business.
Right. Yeah. Coach Pruitt, like I say, I watched your interview with him, and you had made mention of the fact that most players would say he's a player's coach. And I guess at the time of my life, like, I was very serious about like my career and trying to be, as successful as I can. And I went to help him for 2 years, and he's just the most loose and fun-loving guy. And of course, he's family, and that's just his style. And he always got his teams to play really hard, and it's kind of contrary to what popular belief would think is you got to be just rigid and lock in and it's go time, and that's just not who he was. But I think the most important thing is being true to who you are, and he does a great job of that. And the best coaches I've been around do a good job of that.
Well, Coach, I want to thank you, Fred. Thank you for coming on. It's been a pleasure, and I'll let Randy, if he's got a couple more questions, kind of wrap things up. But it's been fun. We've enjoyed it. Maybe we can get you back on in the future.
Yes, sir. Thank you,
Coach. I said it over Phil, but I do want to maybe close the night on this because we're men of faith ourselves, and I feel like a lot of times when I do this, it's kind of just trying to take everybody's message out. But so many coaches that are successful are men of faith also, and we've been able to share that here. How does being a man of faith align itself with being a good coach?
I think the most important thing that you can show to your players is that you're genuine. I don't think, as Coach Gilbert at Pisgah used to say this all the time, that kids are not stupid. They can see through any type of lie you're telling them, and they're going to see right through it if it's not who you are. And I think that's the most important thing. There's a lot of coaches, especially at the college level, who I try to look up to and emulate as far as, their personality. I was watching, Tennessee. I was watching some videos of Coach Barnes, kind of giving his testimony, and Coach Bennett, who was at Virginia. And I just have a great respect for those coaches and anybody in a position of leadership who's willing to share their faith. And, that's who I want to be. My favorite Bible verse is Proverbs 3:5-6. And it talks about acknowledge the Lord in all your ways, and he will direct your path. And I think that's who I want to be as a coach, as a person, as a teacher, is in all my ways to acknowledge who he is and give him the glory. And I think in turn, his will and his path, my path, are going to, align. And I think that's what's most important as far as being a coach and being someone of faith.
That's wonderful. Coach Pearl at Auburn used to, when he was at Tennessee, used to talk about his prayer for his athletes: work to win or lose. It's just to be better people and feel good about themselves for having competed. And I think a lot of times there is a inner feeling of going out and competing and even losing that gives a teenager or a preteen some sense of accomplishment.
Right. Yeah. I've seen, and I mentioned it on social media, just the overwhelming flood of athletes who have gave glory to God. And it's been pro athletes, it's been college, it's been coaches. And there's really something happening, across the country that is special. And God, if one thing's for sure, he's going to get the glory in the end. So it's really exciting to be a part of. And I hope it continues to, spread through the high school ranks and even locally, because we got some really good Christian men in leadership positions and coaches around here that do an awesome job.
Well, Coach, speaking of that, did you see the Texas press conference when the game was over with, everybody was getting up from the press conference and the one player started speaking and everybody sat back down?
Yeah. It was awesome.
That was awesome.
Yeah. What I liked about that one, and I see these videos, and something's different now than what has happened in the past, where it's just the generic, I want to thank Jesus, and that's it. He gave a gospel presentation, in his post game interview, and it was impressive. And the coach at Boise State, it's pretty special, and I really like the way things are going in terms of that, especially in athletics.
One of my greatest moments on this network was hearing Logan Anderson talk about his commitment to Clemson and how Coach Sweeney was playing worship music in the locker room, and that made an impression on him. And for me, that was the greatest testimony I've heard in a long time on a sports network, to hear a young man say, well, right. I went to school because they played worship music in the locker room.
Right. Yeah. And, I think, and kind of going along with that, I think like Coach Sweeney at Clemson, I think if you're genuine and you're trying to live by the Lord's will, you're going to attract people that do that. Yeah. And I think that's the type of team you want to have. You want to have people. Go back to Coach Acuff. He had a quote. He said, "You want to find people you can lose with." And I think what he meant by that is that you want to have people on your team that win, lose, draw. They're good people, and you're not gonna have to worry about, how they react, body language, character. You want to have people win, lose, or draw that are going to be in your corner. And I think Coach Sweeney is a great example of someone who lives out his faith and attracts people who do the same.
Absolutely. Phil, that was my last one. You got anything to close us out tonight? Coach, it was great to have you.
Thank you.
I think we've done well, Blaine. We enjoyed having you on, and we'll look forward to doing it again. I wish you well. I know you're fixing to be a father, and I know that's going to be a great moment for you and your wife both, and we wish you the best. And when you get back into that head coaching ranks, we'll definitely be following you.
Well, thank you guys for having me on. Appreciate all you guys do for local sports. And if I can, if anything I can ever do, just let me know. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Appreciate Coach Smith, the first guest from DAR. He broke the ice. So now we get more.
Hey, maybe if Coach Jonas sometime in the future is a talker, maybe we can get him on.
He's definitely a talker. No worries there.
Yeah, maybe I'll get in touch with you sometime. We'll try to get him on the show at some point.
Sounds good. I'll let him know.
He's Coach Smith. He's Phil Harris. I'm Randall Cunningham, and you've been Beyond the Booth. Thank you. God bless, and we'll see you next Monday. Hey, and tomorrow night, a special episode, Phil. Tomorrow night at 6 o'clock, Ryan Clark from Gadsden State Softball with us for a special episode. So let's not forget that. Good night. God bless, and we'll see you tomorrow night.